Good evening. From the Gail Lemron Auditorium at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, welcome to the Embry-Riddle Speaker Series. I'm Mark Bernier, the moderator for tonight's event. As Iowans vote in their caucuses and the nation gets ready to vote in primaries, there are many people, personalities, and issues to discuss. And we have two people here to go left to right on the political process for 2016. Before an assembled audience here at Embry-Riddle, we present these two people to you. Ellen Ratner is a Fox News analyst. She appears on The Strategy Room and The Long and the Short of It. She is also a White House correspondent and bureau chief for the Talk Media News Service. John LeBoutillier is a former member of Congress from New York, a columnist for The Hill, and one of the creators and tri-hosts for Political Insiders on the Fox News Channel. Both are authors, by the way. Ladies and gentlemen, from left to right, please welcome Ellen Ratner and John LeBoutillier. I have my crowbar to get in a word edgewise because that's the only way it's going to work for me tonight. Let's begin. Tonight, Iowans are going to vote. They're in a caucus. Let's give them a brief definition for people who don't understand the difference between a caucus and a primary. Ellen Ratner, what is it?
So a caucus, and actually I went to the caucuses in 2000 with the current governor, who was a governor then, Governor Branstad. And so he took me, his son had been my intern, which is why I got the in there. But basically what happens is you go, you hear each speaker for somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes to talk about their candidate. Can be as 3, but most talk 10 minutes or so. And then, particularly in the Republican caucuses, there is it's a secret vote. People vote who they want on a piece of paper, and then it goes into this larger group. There's something like 1,600 caucuses across the state. There's 99 counties, and of course each county has several caucuses.
Okay, and people can actually register to vote in Iowa today. As long as they show proof that they're citizens of Iowa, they can vote. Okay. John, I don't know if you've ever, in your time, covered a caucus, but what's the sense? This is the first out of the gate vote of the people, as if it were. Is it losing the sort of the shine that it had on the process from years ago?
I think it's bigger than it's ever been before because there's more media. I mean, the attention around this thing today is huge. The whole world is watching. It's huge. But a couple of points. Ellen described how the Republican caucus works. Democratic is a little different. They get in the room, they stand up and divide. So over here are the Hillary people, over here are the Bernie people, and over here are the Martin O'Malley people. And let's just say there are 100 total. And there are only 10 O'Malley people. So that's 10%.
If they don't get to the
15%, they don't count. So now those 10 can rejoin one of the other two groups. So one of the dynamics going on tonight is what will the O'Malley, there are some O'Malley people. He's got 3% in the polls. So, well, but they're people. And if they went with Bernie, who's only a couple of points behind or ahead, depending on the polls, that could make a big difference. So that's in the Democratic caucus. In the Republican one, this is just a strategy thing. Ben Carson either has 9 or 10 points going into tonight. The Cruz people are working very hard at each caucus to say to those Carson people, look, your guy ain't gonna make it. We need you with us to stop the others. Let's say he's got 9 and 3%, a third of it goes over to Cruz. That could win it for Cruz tonight. So there's all sorts of stuff going on.
Right. And well, I also want to say that Martin O'Malley actually in one sort of underground poll did very well. And some people think he's going to pull 10 to 15%, so we'll see.
That was in the O'Malley household that he did.
No.
She's a psychic, by the way.
Can I tell, you asked what's a caucus, can I tell this famous story that Ellen undoubtedly knows? Mark, it's a little off color. LBJ.
Don't let that stop you.
LBJ was the Senate Majority Leader, and there was a vote or something was going on. And he comes out, this is in the 50s, and he comes out in the hall and the press is there. And they said, well, Senator, what did you accomplish in the Democratic caucus today? He said, well, I learned the difference between a cactus and a caucus. In a cactus, all the pricks are on the outside.
Edit outside. Okay. How much of a psychological lift does this give for the winner of either side?
Well, first of all, I think it's not just a winner, because if you come in second or third on the Republican side where there's so many people running, that may give you a lift. And don't forget, there have been lots of people that have won these caucuses who haven't gone on to get a nomination, Huckabee being the most recent one. And so I think what has to happen is you have to kind of move ahead, and maybe you're not the top guy or woman coming out, but you may be second or third, and that can be just as important.
Okay, a couple thoughts. First of all, in the Republican race, there has never been a non-incumbent who has ever won both Iowa and New Hampshire. And Trump, if he were to win tonight, he's way ahead in New Hampshire. He could be the first non-incumbent ever to do it, which is amazing. Secondly, Pat Buchanan has a great line about it, that winning Iowa is worth $100 million of free publicity. And so whoever does well tonight, and by the way, the same thing applies to Bernie Sanders. He's right on the cusp of winning tonight. If he wins tonight, he's got momentum going into this. If he wins tonight, he's way ahead in New Hampshire. He's going to blow out Hillary Clinton, the inevitable next nominee, in the first two races within 8 days of each other. What kind of front runner is that? You talk about psychological damage. The party will be inwardly in panic over this thing.
Actually, you know, I'm a liberal, wacko Democrat, right?
Don't be redundant.
You knew you were coming into this kind of crowd tonight. Go ahead.
But I do think that if Hillary does not win Iowa tonight, she is going to be in very big trouble in South Carolina and Nevada.
What about New Hampshire? You go there tomorrow.
Well, because I think he's a favorite son. I mean, he is considered, even though he's the next state over, Bernie Sanders.
Expected to win New Hampshire.
He's expected to win New Hampshire. You know, they consider him their child.
All right, we're like 9 minutes into this, and we haven't even talked about the 800-pound gorilla in the room, Donald Trump. I got to tell you, when he first came out, I thought when he shows up in that blue suit and the red tie in Iowa, these farmers are going to say, "Who the heck are you?" and get back where you came from. But they're coming out for him. Are they all expected? I mean, does he have an energized Iowan vote tonight, or is it a lot of talk? Will they come out?
Well, first of all, I'd like to actually stop this discussion for a minute. And I think we need to draw back and look at our country to understand what's happening in these races, because politics does not lead the country. The country leads politics. And with all the Bernie and Trump and all the stuff, we got to look at what's happening in America. Forget ideology. What is going on is unbelievable angst and worry and fear and some anger, sure, but really a deeper worry of the direction of the country. And it's not aimed at Obama, totally. It's also aimed at the Republicans. There's a deeper feeling that this wonderful country is in decline. So when you factor that in to the politics, you understand a little bit more why a Trump and a Sanders does so well, because they're at least talking about the thing is going to hell in a handbasket and we've got to change it. Now, they're in the same trough, these two. One is blaming business and corrupt business as buying off the government, that's Sanders, and there's some truth to it. Trump represents something, which is, I'm incorruptible. I'm so rich, I can say whatever I want, I don't care what anybody says, no one controls me. I'm the sheriff who will go to Washington, I'll clean it up because I know what's wrong with it. That's his message. Okay. And they're both working.
See, and I think...
like the woman who is struggling to open her canteen in the desert, go Ellen.
Okay, so my feeling about Trump and why he's so popular, yes, I think there is a lot of people are insecure about America, and we want to make America the way we grew up with, thinking that America was the top of the hit parade. However, my view of Trump and why he has done so well is that Americans vote for who they want in their living room for the next 4 years. And they've already had Donald Trump in their living room. He has been in their living room, and they like what they've seen because he's been the master of that television show. And so, you know, I think that they're comfortable with him. They're willing to have him in their living room for another 4 years.
Well, listen, that may be, but he has the highest negative rating of any candidate Gallup has ever measured since 1992 when they started this particular question. He's got a 60% negative rating countrywide. That doesn't mean just among Republicans, among all voters. No one's ever been at 60. So I don't know that they want him in the living room. Now, the right that's voting for him, this is what isn't really being gotten to on TV. Trump's best friend in this race is the fact that there are 11 candidates running. So he's got 35% in every state, which is fantastic, but that means 65% of Republicans don't want Trump. And as the field whittles down, will some or most of that 65% alight on an anti-Trump candidate?
Well, wait a minute. So let's assume that you're right, and you know that 35% means that there's another 65% that doesn't want him. Do they want Ted Cruz or Mr. Rubio, Senator Rubio?
We don't know.
Come on.
Well, here's the thing. In the Des Moines Register poll that came out Saturday night, they did this. They took all the other candidates out, made it a one-on-one race among Iowa Republicans, Cruz versus Trump. What do you think the result was?
Cruz.
Cruz won 52-37, which, as my colleague, who's a good pollster, Doug Schoen, said, it means Trump's support is very strong, very deep, and very narrow. He's got that 37% in Iowa.
I don't disagree, but right now, that isn't how primaries run. Now, that may be true in the general election, but right now, he can get that 35% in a crowded field. And most of these guys have enough money to go till, we're talking about 30 days.
No,
no.
I don't want us to get too far away. We have a lot of students with us tonight.
No.
How many Bernie Sanders fans are in the audience? Show of hands. It's amazing how many people who are attending university.
They're not showing.
Yeah, well, but it's surprising. I meet Bernie Sanders fans. Is it because they've given up, to go to John's first point? They just want something different? They haven't looked deep into the philosophy of Bernie Sanders? They just want somebody who's on the outside?
How about this? Of all these major candidates, forget philosophy. Only one has had a consistent message for 30 years. Bernie Sanders. Never changed his message. Reagan had a consistent message for 30 years, right? And he waited for the country by 1980, was ready for Reagan. Bernie Sanders has been a Democratic Socialist since the late 70s. Never wavered. He doesn't do this, which way the wind's blowing. Hillary does. He's pretty consistent. And I think that the young and a lot of other people really appreciate it. When we have 60% think Trump's bad news, 52% thinks Hillary's bad news, Sanders, in his own way, is a very refreshing alternative.
There used to be a question that pollsters asked the public, the voting public, shares our values. I don't think they're asking that question this year. Can you imagine with all these people like Trump, does he share their values?
The question is usually, does this candidate care about people like me?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Right.
They do ask it. They do ask it. I don't know the results of it, but
The press has not put that up in the top.
Okay. Let's talk about, because I'm going to throw a lot of names out here, and then we're going to take your questions from the audience. Our two favorite sons, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio. To the reaction. Jeb Bush was here about a week ago. I saw him speak in Ormond Beach, and he was really on his game. And I thought, why doesn't he come across this well on TV? Marco Rubio has another problem. And they've been sniping at each other, and I've never seen this before, where two guys so far down the ladder are going neck and neck against each other.
Well, they obviously aren't paying attention to Ronald Reagan's "Thou shalt not speak ill of another Republican."
Well, is it also personal? It's like, well, you know, if I can't get it, I'm taking you with me. Do you think there's any truth to that? It's gotten personal.
It has gotten personal. And, you know, I think the press actually needs to look into what was their relationship when Bush was governor, because I think that could shine some light on this issue.
Yeah, well, wasn't Rubio the protege of Jeb?
But we don't know, I mean, you don't know
Okay.
what really happened there.
Okay.
Well, I know this about the Bush family. If you cross them, they're very vindictive. They feel this Rubio was not his year. This is Jeb's year, that
Not
he
his
shouldn't have done it, and they're out to crush him. Even if they don't win, yes, they'll take him with them. But let's look at Rubio for a minute. Rubio is an enormously attractive candidate. He has done well in every debate. His polling is not great, his fundraising is not great, but he's hanging in there. But he's got a problem, which is he needs to win a state pretty quickly. He's probably not going to win tonight. I don't know about New Hampshire. He says he's got a 3-2-1 strategy. Get third tonight, which he probably will, second in New Hampshire next Tuesday, and win South Carolina. If that happens, then he's really on a way up. He'll be in good shape. But no polls have him anywhere close to winning South Carolina. Trump is way ahead. Here's the problem with Rubio. His bad day is going to be March 15th. If he hasn't won in any state, and he gets home here to Florida as the sitting senator, he's currently polling in third place to Trump and Cruz in his home state. If he doesn't win his home state, I don't see it for him. How can you be president if you can't win your own party primary in your own state?
But Senator Rubio has managed to capture a lot of young people, or younger people. And I happen to know this. I have 2 cousins that work for him. I have a cousin by marriage who's the treasurer of the state of Ohio. He wrote 2 op-eds against Governor Kasich, and he is supporting Rubio. I'm like, hello, but he's that younger generation. Okay. So I think that there is something that Rubio says to that group of people. Maybe some of you Republican younger generation can relate to that, but somehow he has managed to capture their attention.
How about Rand Paul, who started out so high in things and then had the political life expectancy of milk? I mean, what happened to that?
Well, I think a couple things, and then I want to go back to something earlier. A couple things. I think Rand Paul believes very much what he says he believes in, but when ISIS got active and foreign policy went back on the front burner of the campaign, his whole libertarian thing has lost some appeal. And then he tried to rejigger it and say, yes, I could favor some intervention in the Middle East. So then some of his libertarian people said, oh, we don't really like him. He is not catching on. I want to go back to something Ellen said a minute ago. 30 days from now, blah, blah. This race, at least in the Republican one, and probably the Democratic one, is not going to be settled in 30 days. The system as it's now devised in the Republican Party, most states, not Florida, but most states are proportional delegate allocation. So even if Trump wins tonight, wins New Hampshire, wins Nevada, wins South Carolina, people say, oh, he's going to run the table. Not going to happen, because what's going to go on is these candidates will drop out, and the little ones will go quickly. Huckabee will be out of here tomorrow unless he gets...
Huckabee shouldn't have been in there to begin with.
He and Santorum both out tomorrow.
Maybe. Huckabee said, if I don't get in the top 3 in Iowa, I'm out. And they're little ones. Then you get to New Hampshire, and you have the big 4, Rubio, Christie, Kasich, and Bush. They've all thrown everything in, really, to New Hampshire. I think Rubio survives no matter what. But Kasich or Christie, one of them will be out after New Hampshire, and Bush will hang for a while. But over the next month, this thing's going to get whittled down. And no one's piling up all the delegates because of this proportional thing. And when we get to even April, no one's going to have it locked up. And if we get to what we were talking about, the anti-Trump has now arrived. And let's say it's Rubio. And the establishment and the money and the Stop Trump people get behind him. Kasich is gone. Christie's gone. They're all gone. And it's Rubio, Cruz, and Trump.
What about Ben Carson? When's he out?
Oh, he goes after New Hampshire.
He goes after New Hampshire?
I think so, yeah. I don't think Ben Carson now is a campaign that's worth spending much time on. This guy, it's become a weird thing, you know?
Is it
well,
because of Armstrong Williams?
Yes.
Yeah, well,
I didn't want to get into it.
we
but
didn't. Yeah, both of
it's a
us.
Everybody know
mon-
who Armstrong Williams is?
It's a money-making.
Both of us
thing.
don't want to get into it.
We all know Armstrong.
And on the Rubio Young thing that Ellen mentions, we have to focus up on something. The Republican primary electorate is a lot of us. It's older people. It's 50 and older. By the way, have you all noticed something? I'm going to list off these names: Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, maybe Michael Bloomberg, all talked about as credible candidates for president. All of them close to or over 70 years old.
Yeah.
We never had candidates, other than Reagan at 69, which was considered unbelievable. But now, has anybody written about Trump at 69? Bernie, 74. Hillary will be 69 this fall. Bloomberg is 73. Never any criticism they're too old. Why? Because the country is getting older.
Stay with
which is
Bloomberg
great.
for a moment, because
Yeah.
you both know him. What's in it for him? He's got $1 billion. He's
Well,
bored. Nothing to do.
one of the things that Bloomberg pays a lot of attention to is polls. And for him even to make the little wave recently, he had to have seen some polling, or he would not have made a peep. It's just not his style. He's very sort of poll and data driven.
But he also said that if he would only come in if Hillary wasn't in it. Didn't he say?
Well, he hasn't said anything. Now, Doug Schoen, who I do the show with on Fox, he's Bloomberg's pollster and chief political consultant, makes a lot of money off Bloomberg, but is very loyal to Bloomberg. And what he says is, in private, that if the Republicans pick, say, Cruz, and if the Democrats pick Ellen's heartthrob, Bernie Sanders, then Bloomberg sees, and the polling shows, a route up the middle for a centrist candidate, because you have the far right with Cruz, the far left with Sanders, and there's this big gap. And Bloomberg is a very serious guy. He wants to be president very badly.
He certainly does.
He wants it, and if he does it, he'll go all out and spend $1 billion, which is huge. So I don't rule it out, but he needs to get going in March, apparently, because of filing deadlines. And I'm telling you, we will not know in March who the two candidates will be.
See, and I think after Super Tuesday, which is the March 1st, I think we actually will have a much better idea. I just disagree with you. I think we will have a very good idea. It will be whittled down, but we may not have a Republican or Democratic candidate, but we'll have a very good sense of where this race is going.
All right, we've talked about names and personalities. Did we leave anybody out?
We haven't talked about Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
We talked about Trump. Well,
We haven't talked about Carly Fiorina.
Oh, Carly Fiorina. I apologize. You know, we actually were looking at her for a while and thinking, well, she's got to be running in this to hope that she'd be vice president. Nobody runs to be vice president, but is anybody going to look to her? Because that's one of the issues we're supposed to talk about is vice presidential running mates. Are any of the people in the field?
No.
Oh, no, there are two in the field that are right on the short
No,
list.
but in terms of her.
Oh,
no.
her, no.
She's not?
No.
She's gone?
Well,
She's
and by the way, I think we need to spend a minute on her. What has happened to her? She won the first kiddie debate,
That's at the small table. That's the
which was in Cleveland, but she was great in that debate.
She was, and it was in my
Then
hometown.
she's on the major stage at the Reagan Library and did great in that debate, and went up a little bit in the polls, and then frankly has just disappeared.
Well, see, I think what she did is she tried to signal the evangelical vote. She showed up in this red dress with a cross that was like this big, and she tried to signal, I'm with you. But it was so fake that people didn't buy into it.
Well, maybe, but still, I'm just amazed at her campaign. I mean, she doesn't care about the evangelical vote in New Hampshire, because there isn't one, and she's campaigned like crazy in New Hampshire and isn't getting anywhere. And
Hey, speaking of evangelical,
they don't come out of Cuba, you know.
I beg pardon?
They don't come out of Cuba.
No, they don't.
Right.
But two things that drove me nuts. Did you see Ted Cruz stand at the pulpit waving a Bible? I'm like, yesterday, and it's funny.
He's in church.
Yeah, I know. But
Well, Donald Trump did the same thing.
Whatever happened to electioneering in churches? You're not supposed to do that.
No, you're
501c?
not. You're not.
What the heck is going on? Do we all throw that out the window?
Well,
Both
but they're
sides do it.
all getting endorsed by pastors, and Jerry Falwell Jr. is interviewing Trump, and Iowa is another world.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump went to Liberty University.
Cruz announced his candidacy at Liberty University. He's a senator from Texas. Does he announce in Texas? No, he announces at Liberty University. So,
But even Rubio, who was a Mormon, I think, twice.
but not anymore.
No,
But he's gone back and forth.
He's
He's
gone.
switched religions more often than he has his position on immigration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when he came out for the Christian thing, I'm like, find a faith and stick with it for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
you know?
well, it's a problem, It's a problem.
Okay.
All right, so wait a sec. We have candidates. So have we done Trump? We haven't really done Trump.
No, go
And
ahead.
I think we've done Trump. I mean, Trump is an unbelievable phenomenon this year, good and bad, without really any consultants or pollsters or anything. He has ripped through the Republican field and basically annihilated this so-called deep bench that the Republican Party had. And it's a phenomenon to have witnessed it and to be
Well,
watching
the other
it right
thing
now.
is that he has not spoken about some very hot button issues. I mean, he completely avoids the gay marriage issue. He's like gone on that issue, never hear, and the press has not held him to the fire
On anything.
on anything.
Because if you interview him and you give him grief, he'll blast you, and then he won't come on your show anymore. But if he comes on your show, you get great ratings.
Yeah.
So if you're a typical media, you want him on. So
Well, I've certainly seen that at the White House, where people are afraid to go after him, but
They
they're
wouldn't
also
go on you for a while.
but they're afraid to have him there too.
Yeah.
I mean, people have been underneath complaining about him,
Okay.
but not too much.
What are the big issues that voters are thinking about this year? Is it crushing debt? Is it jobs? Is it national defense?
People are terrified of ISIS. Terrified.
Yeah.
And I think that is really number one when we talk to people in talk radio. I'm sure you experience that. I think finances and jobs, and if you want to add debt to that, that's another
I would
issue.
say that's right, but I would say it a little differently. I think in the Republican Party, the hottest issue is immigration, which includes ISIS, Syrian refugees. All of it is wrapped in, and this is why Trump rose so quickly, was seizing that issue, which among Republican primary voters is a huge issue. They're furious over this thing. And Trump speaks in language that relates to them. Now, let me just tell you about Trump, his strategy. He told a friend of mine in the media in the fall, all I'm aiming at is winning white men to win the nomination. That's my demographic that I'm aiming at, white men. If you look at almost everything he said, it appeals to white men, right? Mexicans are rapists and criminals. We got to keep all Muslims out. He dumps on Carly Fiorina's looks, which is unbelievable, but he did it. The only one that really wasn't aimed at white men was the comment about McCain. And people in the media said, oh, this will ruin Trump. And I knew right
Nothing
away
will ruin
it would
Trump.
not ruin him, because in the Republican Party,
His numbers went up.
nobody likes McCain.
Yeah.
They don't like him. So he knew, and he's smart about it. But he's incurring self-inflicted damage as we go along here. He may win tonight. He may win next week. He will do well for a while, but the damage is building. And those older people in here remember how we used to develop photographs in a dark room. You put the film in, you had the dark lights on, and it's in a dish of chemicals. And over time, the film comes into focus. And after a few minutes, there's a clear picture. That's what's happening in voters' minds about all these candidates right now. They're beginning to develop a picture of who these men and women are. And over time, the ones who are paying attention have already developed a good feeling about who she likes, Bernie Sanders. They like him. There's no negative feelings about the guy.
I'm also close with Martin O'Malley, so okay.
Well, there's no pictures of him in the
No.
dark room.
Yeah, I still don't get what, it's
But
like.
I'm one of these people that actually thinks that there's a very good chance that Trump's going to be the nominee. Very
Okay.
good chance.
I mean, O'Malley to me was
I
like.
see him in Cleveland, Ohio, speaking. No
Chafee-
makeup.
It's like when Chafee ran. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, really, Chafee? I mean, does this guy actually get up in the morning and say, I don't know, honey, what do you think? Blue tie, will that help? He was in that thing. I don't understand why he was in it.
And by the way, have you watched this guy on television? He's not good. He's not a good candidate. I'm talking about O'Malley. Not good.
No.
Doesn't answer questions well. He's halting.
Who told him to run? I mean,
The guy that he sees in the mirror every morning.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm.
okay, let's enter Sarah Palin into the picture now. Ooh.
Sarah Palin's got family problems.
She's got what problems?
Family problems.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Big family problems.
when she came out for Trump, I was surprised because she talked Cruz into coming into it in the first place to run for Senate. She worked for him. And then it was a coup for Trump, but she's almost become shrill at this point. I watched the endorsement. It was uncomfortable to watch. Was she there purely for evangelicals?
Evangelicals in Iowa, where she has that slice of the electorate, and it goes to my darkroom theory on Trump. Short run, it helps him. Long run, it'll hurt him. Blowing off the Fox debate last week, that in the long run is not going to help him because
we
it
agree on
shows a thin-skinned, intemperate, weird character that billionaires have. I mean, they're different than we are. You know, they don't. Not counting your brother. They
He's
don't.
not a billionaire.
All right. They don't. It's the same thing with Perot. You go back and
Oh, no.
the parallels between Perot and Trump are right there.
Yeah.
And people don't remember anymore. But in '92, the Perot rallies were just like the Trump rallies. Humongous events. The difference was he wasn't running in a Republican primary. He was running as an independent. And by June
He
of
got
90,
19% of the vote as an independent.
yeah, but before we get that, in June of '92, he's leading in the polls for president over President Bush, the first Bush, and the soon-to-be nominated Bill Clinton. He's leading. And what does he do? He drops out and says, well, the CIA bothered my daughter's wedding. And then he drops back in and gets in the debates and did pretty well and got 19%. So that showed us there is a route for a third candidate, a better, saner version of Perot. Now, Trump is somewhat better. He's a much better political candidate. Saner, I don't know, but he's eccentric. He's a little odd. And whether this country wants that, we're going to find out.
But people identify with him. And that's what.
How? That's amazing, isn't it?
Well, but
He's
they
just
do.
like us, they say. Other than the money, he's just like us. Well,
Well, how many times has he been married? That's never been played. It used to be a killer for candidates if you were married multiple times. I think that stopped sometime around Gerald Ford when that wasn't even mentioned about
Right.
divorce. So I don't know.
I don't think he was divorced. It was his wife, wasn't it? It was Ford's wife Betty had been married before.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
What about
Reagan was divorced.
But remember Kennedy, they didn't think that he could be elected because he was a Catholic. I mean, hello.
What about Kasich? He's doing well in New Hampshire.
He's from the great state of Ohio,
Yeah, I know.
right?
But you were also fond of the mayor of Cleveland, and that thing, you could set it on fire at one point. So
I know. But,
how's that working out for you?
well, Cleveland's rebounded.
I like John Kasich. He came in after you in Congress. He was he budget chairman?
Yep.
I loved him at that time. He was tough. He was gritty. You know, he was part of this whole Newt Gingrich, let's bring down cost of government. But he's been a different guy out there. I don't know if he's
Well,
trying
one
to
of the things
reinvent
he
himself.
did that wasn't so smart is he took what he did in Ohio and he kind of rubbed it in people's noses in Iowa. And it did not play well at all. And it's too bad because I think he's a pretty good governor. And he's got 70% of Ohioans in favor of him, including some Democrats. I mean, go figure.
But like Rubio and Bush in the Ohio Republican presidential primaries, running third.
Well, we like to say in Ohio, so goes the nation.
Yeah, so I would think Kasich will be on the short list for VP. Rubio will be on it.
He will.
Well, he'll be on it because he's from this crucial state and he's Hispanic, so.
Can Rand Paul get reelected in Kentucky
Yes.
if he sits this thing out much longer? Because I heard
Yeah.
they're getting antsy.
I think he gets reelected. Kentucky's changing. They just elected this governor who's very conservative and he won big. Rand Paul is keeping his eye on his race in Kentucky.
I think he gets reelected.
Yeah.
If Rubio doesn't get the nod and he drops out and he's not even a VP, do you think he'll come back here and try to rebirth? Because he's still a young man.
Yes, of course he will. He'll
I
run for
thought-
governor
I
someday.
think you guys have Rubio the rest of your lives.
I thought the path for Rubio should have been to be governor of the state of Florida, which he could have been, and most people believe he could have been, and then make that leap, because Americans have traditionally liked people with executive experience.
Well, how's that working out this year, though?
It's not.
These governors aren't making it.
But not now, maybe later. I mean,
yeah.
Christie, what's his problem? The bridge? I mean,
Well, there's problems before the bridge. The problems went back to 2012, embracing the president during Hurricane Sandy. And even before that, at the convention in Tampa, when he gave the keynote address, and he didn't mention Romney, it was all about me, I, and the feeling that Christie is out for Christie. And he's an Italian from New Jersey, like Giuliani was an Italian from New York, and whether that has appeal out in America, I don't know.
I think Christie has two problems. One is he went into Iowa this summer, and he was asked, it was at a fundraiser, but there was press there, and he said, what would you do the first day you're president? And he said, I'd fire anybody that was not loyal to me or that had worked for President Obama. Well, there's some very good people. So, I mean, he said that. And then when there was a huge snowstorm last week, he goes and campaigns.
but he left because he said, I got to get home.
Well, and then he talks about he's got a mop. And I mean, he's like all over the place. He isn't focused on being the governor. And that's what you got to do.
Well, let me say about him, though. Don't underestimate, if he's the guy that does well next week in New Hampshire, and he could, if he survives that, I could see this scenario where a lot of this GOP big money who wants to stop Trump and Cruz, they go to Christie and get behind him for a while with this theory that Christie is a bully, but he's our bully.
Yeah.
And we'll put him in the ring with Trump. And he's the one guy that can beat up Trump and will want to do it. Because this is still going on. The establishment of the GOP doesn't want Cruz and they don't want Trump.
But they like Christie and they like Rubio?
Yeah, they like Rubio. I think they like Christie. He was head of the Governor's
But they don't like
Association.
Jeb.
They love Jeb. They gave him $150 million, but he's not getting it done. And they want to win. They want to keep control first of the party and then maybe win the election. They don't really want Trump, but they'd rather have Trump than Cruz. Cruz is anathema to them.
Hey, let's talk about Joe Biden. Anybody?
Warming up in the bullpen.
That's what you and I have been saying for a couple of weeks. Here's what you tell me. How much more heat is going to be put on Secretary of State Clinton over the emails and Benghazi, especially the emails, especially since now we have ones that they say they can't release. That was bad, not helpful. Does the president drape his arm around Biden and say, Joe, I know you're suffering, you lost your son, we're all there with you, but for the sake of the party and the nation, you got to run?
Well, he only will do that if and when Hillary would be indicted. If she is indicted, now she tells people in private, even if I'm indicted, I'm going to keep running, which will not work. Will not work. Well, but the candidates...
Did she say that?
Yeah, in private, she tells people that. But listen, to defend anybody, I'll defend even her. If you want to be president, you get a mindset and you spend decades working for this thing. To have her just say, okay, I'll stop and give up my lifelong dream.
She made a deal with Bill Clinton when he ran in '92 that he was going to run and then she was going to run. That was a deal. That was talked about. It's been in the press. So how is she going to give up for an indictment when he didn't give up for even more, perhaps?
Well, but she will have to give up. If you're indicted by the Obama Justice Department, and that's a big if. We're not there yet, okay? I think
The party doesn't turn to Sanders.
Oh,
no.
absolutely, the party does. The
No.
Hillary people, from the top of their head to the bottom of their feet, they are pro-Hillary. They're obsessed.
Yeah,
Well, but let's hold on for a second. Let's go to this email thing. It is getting, I mean, you're asking about it. It's in the news every couple days. There's a new revelation. The thing on Friday was huge. By the Obama administration on the Friday
Who could've
before
stopped
Iowa.
it?
Well, they couldn't stop it, but they could have slowed the announcement for a couple of days.
A lot of us press people believe that it was leaked originally. That server was leaked by the Obama administration.
Oh, definitely it was. That's the beauty of this, as for my fellow Republicans in here. The beauty of this email thing as a political issue is that Republicans have nothing to do with it. And if they did, the Republicans would ruin it. They ruin everything like this but by overdoing it.
Yeah.
And she's trying to say, oh yeah, the vast right-wing conspiracy. Well, I never knew Barack Obama and Valerie Jarrett were right-wingers, okay? This is her problem with her own former administration.
But she mishandled it. If she had come out and said, yes, I had a private server, and it was the former president of the United States, so I thought it was secure, and we think, China coming into personnel records, 30 million of them or something like that, 20 to 30 million. I didn't feel like I was going to be secure in the US government. I feel like I was going to be more secure with my home server. I think she could have done very well with that, but she missed that opportunity.
All right, so that's a very good take, and she didn't do it. So let us, as of February 1st, tonight, where is this story? The story is getting white hot in the media. They ask her about it. People on rope lines ask her about it. The media talks about it. There's speculation about it. It is reaching in the media and the public sphere a point where it can't stay this way. But that's separate from what's going on inside the Justice Department and the FBI, which we do not know. We do not know what's happening. They are not leaking what's going on. There's very little leaking, a little bit, but not much. This thing about the announcement on Friday, that's from a separate thing. That is Freedom of Information Act. There's 6 different cases. The biggest one of which is Judicial Watch. And they've gone to federal court, and they have a federal judge administering the case, ordering the State Department to release 55,000 pages of emails over a 6-month period. The last ones are coming out this month. The 31,000 pages of emails that she erased on her server
Are not erased.
well, we think the FBI has recovered some or all of them, and we have no clue what's in them, but I'm sure it's not good if she erased it. And we don't know what's happening there. But so for the campaign, there is this possibility that between now and November, someone could push to have her indicted. Now, I get back to the indictment.
But they are, let's face it, people who work at the Justice Department are not necessarily political appointees. In fact, they're not. They're usually career people.
Correct.
And we don't know where they're.
Well, we know this, that there's the FBI working with an 8-person team of career prosecutors who aren't supposed to be political. They're there no matter who the president is. And at some point, they have 2 questions to answer. A, were federal crimes committed? And if the answer is yes, B, do we have enough evidence to get a conviction of someone for breaking that law, breaking those laws? If the answer is yes to both, they then refer it up to the Attorney General, and she is not going to make that decision. The White House is going to be involved. You cannot have a former cabinet member and the leading candidate for president indicted without the president saying yes or no.
Oh,
go ahead.
I completely disagree. If you recall, when Nixon tried to interfere, the Justice Department kept it and they resigned. So I don't think I do.
Well, wait a
Listen, I've
second.
covered Obama. I do not think that he is going to interfere one way or the other.
It's not
I really
interfering.
don't.
It's not. That's a
I
different
don't
thing.
think he'd make that
No,
decision.
wait a second. You're talking about the Saturday Night Massacre in 1975.
That's right.
You already had the gig.
But what that was, that's a different thing. That is where Nixon fired people to keep from him being charged.
Yeah.
That is not the same. This
I
is
understand,
entirely.
but you had career people who said you cannot mess with us, and they resigned.
Well, listen, I think there'll be resignations only this way. If the evidence is overwhelming that she broke the law, if it is, and they do not indict her, then I think people will resign. I think the head of the FBI will resign, and it'll be a you-know-what storm over this thing, which cannot help her politically.
No,
But
I don't disagree, but I do not think Obama's going to get involved.
Do you think that people would resign that have been working on the investigation, like John says, if she's not indicted?
It depends what the evidence is. If the evidence is overwhelming and Obama interferes, which I honestly do not think he will do.
He would.
Nah.
Well, wait a second. Let's just get the verb right. Interfere. The only interference is if he says, don't indict her.
That's right.
I'm saying, put yourself in Obama's shoes. They come to him and they say, Mr. President, we don't know what to do. Here's the evidence. We judge it to be overwhelming.
They will never do that.
Well, of course they're going to do it. This is the proper thing. He's the chief law enforcement of the United States. Of course he's going to do it.
No, the chief law enforcement officer is the Attorney General.
Well, but she is appointed by Obama, and she is not going to make that call without the White House saying what they want.
Which I tend to agree with. I think something at that elevation, the president.
course
I
they will.
think that's what you right-wingers would like to think, but I don't think that that's going to happen.
I'll tell you why it will happen.
And we're going to go to the audience next.
It will happen. It will happen, and Obama is going to make, I believe, this decision, which is, I ran against the Clintons, and I beat them. The last thing I want is to end up being accused of covering up for Hillary Clinton. I will have my legacy and my last year in office tarred if I step in and stop an indictment that has been recommended from below.
And I think the call, if they do call if Loretta Lynch, who's the Attorney General, calls the Oval Office, he will say, sorry, I cannot get involved.
He won't call her. She'll give it to Valerie Jarrett, and Valerie Jarrett and Obama have already. I think they've already decided.
May have been the leaker, so
yes, she is.
I don't see it.
If you read Ed Klein's book, Blood Feud, this is already in there. That the original leak came from Valerie Jarrett. She launched 6 investigations into the now John Kerry State Department of Hillary's conduct at state. Her spending of money, hiring people, the Clinton Foundation. They've been looking to nail the Clintons. And the reason for this isn't Hillary. It's not that Barack Obama hates Hillary. He doesn't. He hates Bill. Hates Bill Clinton. It's the 2 alpha males of the Democratic Party. They hate each other. Oh, yeah?
Really?
They hate each other. And what the Obamas don't want. Where do the Obamas come from? Chicago. What is the coin of the realm in Chicago politics? Patronage, right? They've put their buddies in every job in the federal government. The day that the Clintons get a hold of the Democratic Party and maybe the White House,
they'll dismantle it?
They'll get rid of every Obama person. They ran against each other 8 years ago. They hate each other. Remember Bill Clinton saying, oh, it's the biggest fairy tale that ever lived? They hate each other. Not Hillary. It's the 2 men.
I've got 2 students that are helping. Actually, we have 4 with us tonight.
Okay.
I need you each to take a microphone. And if you have a question for our guest, raise your hand. We'll come to you as quickly as possible. Tim and Vittorio, I need somebody with a microphone over here. If you raise your hand, we'll come to you first with your question tonight. Right up here. Oh, there you go. Go ahead. Ed Connor,
There's
go
somebody
ahead.
right in the middle there, too.
My question about the emails is this, and it's something that's troubled me because I haven't heard it discussed on the shows, and maybe I just missed it. For all these years that Hillary had a private server, she was sending communications back and forth to the White House. When they get a communication, isn't there something on the email that indicates whether it comes from a private server or from a government server?
Well, the email address would say .gov or not. So, yeah.
to drag the Obama administration into this mess if they start releasing?
Apparently, they're covered that in '09, in the Oval Office, Hillary was told, you must use a government server, and she didn't do it. So she's going to have to explain that.
Thank you.
Hasn't yet. By the way, you asked me a question before we went on the air, and I should mention this. Robert Gates, the former head of the CIA, Defense Department, the whole bit, been around forever.
New book?
What?
He's got a new book.
A new book. And he recently said, Ellen, that he believes that because of this unsecure server, it's very likely that both Russia and China hacked Hillary and got everything that went through there, which coincides with...
They hacked 30 million of our personnel records.
That's true.
And that was
the
our
hacking's a
government
problem.
server.
Hacking is a terrible problem, but we're only talking now about Hillary and politics. And I had mentioned on Mark's show one day that my nephew works in Singapore, and he told me the day this thing first broke last spring, he said, I will guarantee you that Hillary Clinton, the first time she hit Beijing as Secretary of State, before she exited the airport to go to whatever meeting, the Chinese had hacked through her BlackBerry, had everything. Before she left the grounds, he told me they hack every American person that arrives. That's their job, is to swipe from our, they steal everything from us.
Vittorio has a question from the audience now.
Hello, how are you doing? My question is that, well, first of all, we've seen that candidates, the major candidates for nominations on both sides are either far left or far right. We've seen the Affordable Care Act passed without a single Republican vote in the House. So we've seen obscene amount of filibusters by the Republicans in the Senate. So will electing any of these candidates that are the majors that are running, will that push the parties farther in their own respective directions and thus cause another series of Congress not being able to do anything, the president not be able to do anything other than executive orders, and overall us not accomplishing anything and facing the challenges and the goals?
Well, it's interesting. A Democrat last night said to me, I hope that Trump wins because we will get the House and Senate back after he's been president for 2 years. And that has traditionally been part of the issue, is that it reverts to the other party because the party in power has, been one way or the other. We certainly saw that with Clinton. We saw that with Bush. We've seen this happen. So don't know, but it is gridlock in Washington for sure. And you're a former congressman, you know about that.
By the way, it did not happen with George W. Bush. In '02, they kept and picked up seats in the House, mostly because of 9/11.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but it does. And the reason is, and it goes to your excellent question, is the party, when they have the House, Senate, and White House, they overreach. And then the voters punish them in the first midterm. And it's happened in those cases. But your overall question was, are we headed towards more gridlock, right, from this thing? Could be. Now, I'll tell you about the gridlock and this divided government that we have. This reflects the country. You say we want things done, but what is it we want done? The country hasn't reached a consensus on what it wants done. And that's why we're having this election and we're debating immigration and other things. And by the time we get to next fall, maybe the country will have said to the two nominees something about what they want. Because someone's going to win. And that guy or gal will have learned what it is they're going to do from the public. Trump says he's going to build a wall, he's going to stop Muslims from coming in here, and he's going to have some sort of national health insurance.
Famous last words.
Yeah, well, he says he's going to do it. If he gets elected, he will try to do it. Have a national deportation force. I mean, all this stuff. If he says he's going to do it and he gets elected, then he better do it.
Let's come back over here now and a question. Right here, on the left. The lady right there.
Thank you. What happens if Bernie Sanders gets elected and nothing happens in Congress or the Senate? Where does he go with his ideas?
That question, by the way, can be used two ways, Sanders and Trump. If Trump comes in, and he's going to hit people over the head, couldn't they just lock up and say, we're not giving you anything you want? But the question came to you on Sanders.
So I think, first of all, generally there is a honeymoon, and he's a congressman, was a congressman, so he can tell you better than I can, when a president comes in and they get their appointees. So there's a lot that can be done in the different secretariats, whether it be State Department or the military. And so I think that he actually can accomplish. Is he going to necessarily be able to accomplish that the single-payer healthcare system? Probably not. But he might be able to make the case to the American people, and that might change it. It depends how persuasive he can be.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he has that, but he does want to raise taxes. And the reason I could not answer you, really, and I'm thinking about it as you ask it, what would happen if Sanders wins the election? First, we don't know, does the House stay Republican? And I think it does, because it's been so gerrymandered that the seats are almost guaranteed to be Republican.
Well, also they have a huge majority right now.
Right, so I don't think, now the Senate right now is in Republican hands, but most of the vulnerable Republicans are in blue states, or in the case, this is a purple state, Rubio's seat is up, you know, and Ohio, no, not Ohio, Illinois, Pennsylvania. There are a lot of Republicans who are very worried. And if Sanders is the Democrat, does that help or hurt Republicans running for Senate? I really don't know. The argument's the other one's reverse. If Trump or Cruz is the nominee, the establishment believes they'll get slaughtered in November and that we'll lose these senators. That's the conventional wisdom. But it's not a conventional
There's
year.
also a lot of fundraising that's going on, and actually the Democratic National Committee has done very well with fundraising, and this will help, and the Senate and House committees have done very well. That does actually help, even though the district is gerrymandered, the districts are gerrymandered. I think that's up for grabs, and it also depends on who's the nominee and what kind of coattails they have.
Yeah, well, and staying with this for a moment, because if it's Trump or Cruz, and because they're from the outside and they're not mainstream, isn't it possible that the Mitch McConnells and all those folks are just going to say, we're not going to, he may be a Republican, but we're not giving him what he wants? Might they lock down?
Are you talking about when the guy is president?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
All right, so let's go through this. Ted Cruz has been elected president, and the Republicans have kept the House and the Senate. Then
she's on life support.
Yeah. Then
Yeah, I'm in South Sudan somewhere.
I believe if that happened, the congressional leadership will follow Ted Cruz.
I agree with that, unfortunately.
Now, if Trump wins the nomination and wins the presidency, he is a wild card. We really don't know anything about what Donald Trump would do. It's not meant to be funny, but have you noticed that he's the only candidate in either party that never has any advisors out front? We don't know who advises on foreign policy, economic, nothing. He doesn't like to share the limelight. He might be the only candidate for president who doesn't have a running mate because he doesn't want to share the limelight. I mean, seriously.
No. I actually think
somebody so low key.
He looked so uncomfy last week when Sarah Palin was talking. It's like he's thinking, what have I done? I can't shut her up. She won't stop. He's over here like,
No. I actually think that he does bring along, look, he is, for whatever you can say about Donald Trump, he is a manager.
There'd be people from business.
That's right. And he will bring people in. He will meet with Mitch McConnell. He will meet with the Speaker. He will bring them in. I have to tell you, I think that is something I think he could do very well and will do well.
To do what, though? That's what we don't know. We know what Ted Cruz will do. Ted Cruz.
He's already the president. He doesn't need any extra limelight.
Who?
If Trump becomes president.
Trump, for instance, Trump says, I want to get rid of Obamacare. I want to get rid of it, and I want to replace it with something better, and we're going to take care of everybody, whatever that means. Now,
He's never going to say that.
well, he's been saying it.
I know.
I heard him say it today. And he says this. Now, you really think that Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan are going to go for a national health insurance plan. These guys are running away from getting rid of Obamacare. They prayed last summer that the Supreme Court would not send it back to the Congress.
Yeah.
So we've got big problems. By the way, my other thing, which has nothing to do with Ellen, who's a lovely person, by the way. This is not to do with her. But to me, where American politics has gone to hell is the Republican Party's gone to hell. That the Democrats are always awful. I expect it. But Republicans are better. And since we've become a divided party, the Tea Party and the regular Republicans at each other's throats, we can't, that's why nothing gets done in the House and Senate. We've won the House and Senate, we still can't do anything because we can't agree with each other what to do. Forget the Democrats. Pelosi and Harry Reid have nothing to do with it. It's the Republicans can't work with each other. And until we straighten the Republican Party out, the whole system's not going to work.
But many Democrats think exactly what you think about the Democratic
That's not
Party.
good.
No,
Okay.
absolutely. Look, you have Elizabeth Warren. Be careful what you wish for, because of course they did not make her head of the Consumer Committee, and then she ran for Senate and won. But the Democrat Party is in disarray. Most Democrats, if you ask them, they'll tell you the Democratic Party is in disarray the same way you're talking about.
Well, but I'll tell you something. The whole thing is flipped around. Democrats have tremendous party loyalty and discipline. When do you ever hear any Democrats criticize Obama? They've been very loyal to him, even though they really are pissed off over how badly he has treated them.
My friend Bill Press just wrote a book called Buyer's Remorse.
But he's not in office. I'm talking about, you don't hear senators.
office holders.
I'm talking about the Congress.
They pull up short.
Congress is very mad privately, the Democrats. They never hear from Obama. He does nothing for them. He thinks they're trash. He doesn't want to eat dinner with them. He doesn't schmooze them. They like to be schmoozed, Congressman. And you can get them to do stuff if you schmooze. He wants to have dinner with poets and architects and writers. He thinks that's what he ought to do. And he's gotten most of what he wanted. Let's face it. When the day comes, when they write the obituary of Barack Obama, it's going to say, Barack H. Obama, the 44th President of the United States, who was the first black elected president, who instituted the first national health insurance program, and who opened relations with Iran, died yesterday at 98 years old. All right,
Cuba.
That's his legacy. And listen, from his point of view, twice elected as the first black president, whoever would have thunk it? Never would we have thought it. Putting in Obamacare, I don't like it. A lot of you don't like it, but he got it in. It's an accomplishment. Opening with Iran, an ultimate fiasco, but it's what he wanted. He got it done.
So I got to let Ellen in on
All
some
right,
of this.
okay. But I have to tell you, the fact is where I will agree with you is that Barack Obama could do more in relating to Congress. I don't know if any of you have heard the Lyndon Johnson tapes that C-SPAN has run, but as you know, Lyndon Johnson had a little tape recorder. He taped absolutely everything.
Everybody.
And he is on the phone saying, I'm the President of the United States and I need you to vote this way. And it is true that Barack Obama has not done that. I'm not sure George Bush did it either, though. But it is true that he could probably get even more done, and even more with your friends, the Republicans, if he were to do a little bit of that schmoozing.
By the way, I think it's one of the downsides. On this, you mentioned Obamacare being passed with no Republican votes. Obama should have been smarter about it. He should have said, you know, I need the Republicans to buy in this thing. I got to change it enough to make it bipartisan. He didn't get one Republican.
Where is the Republican plan?
Well, hold on.
They voted against it. Where is it?
Well, that's his job, is to work with them. He got elected. If we go back to 2008.
Wait a minute, didn't he put, Hagel is coming here in a couple of
Right,
weeks.
Hagel was his Secretary of Defense. He put him in the cabinet. It's traditional to put one of the other party in. That's good. But on legislation, to cut the Republicans out. Now, they were probably being obstinate, but if we remember...
Oh, he talked down to him at that
But
breakfast.
if we remember in the race, a lot of big-name Republicans, like Bill Safire, voted for Obama. Bill Buckley voted for Obama, or Chris Buckley was his son. They all came out and endorsed Obama, said, I've had it with the Republicans. Julie Nixon Eisenhower, President Nixon's daughter, voted and announced she's voting for Obama. There was a lot of this. Obama was the thing. And there were these stories, you know, when he was at Harvard Law, he was head of the law review, and everybody there liked him and all felt he was open to every idea. This was the Obama we were sold in 2008. And he gets in there, first thing he does, stimulus plan, $960 billion to stimulate the economy. What does he do? Goes to Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, says, here's the 960, you do it your way. And they go and give it out to their members for shovel-ready projects. Nothing works. A couple years later, he jokes about it. Well, says Obama, I guess those projects weren't quite as shovel-ready as we thought. That thing poisoned the well in Congress. Taking public money from a guy that's supposed to be reaching out and handing it out just to Democratic members for their district.
Yeah, but John, be the devil's advocate, he kept getting it. Look at the debt now. It's more than twice.
Well, he kept getting it because he had a Democratic House and Senate. And he kept getting the money and pissing it away. And he makes these deals to pass Obamacare in April 2010, the Louisiana Purchase, the Nebraska Cornhusker Compromise. He gets all this. Hold on, let me finish. He gets this stuff done. And what do the voters do? They threw the House out. They throw him out and give the House to the Republicans. And I'll get to them in a minute. And he gets himself reelected because Romney's an idiot. And then in 2014, we get back to the same thing. Obamacare's the issue. The country votes the Democrats out.
I got to give equal time here. You know, if you ever come out of your shell, you're going to be something.
Well, the fact is that it's not that he did all of this, because you had a Republican Congress that has voted 50-some times against Obamacare, and there is not one single alternative that they have put down on the table. So you can't say that he just threw this away or that he got all this money and it went. It's just not true.
Ellen,
that these guys have devoted themselves from day one to destroying President Obama.
But Ellen, we go back to the end of George W. Bush, which was a disastrous presidency, okay, at the end. It was a disaster. And it's why Obama won, and why the Democrats in 2006 won the House and Senate. And Obama came along, and he was different. He wasn't part of the Washington establishment. He was from Chicago, obviously a black, new face, with hope that we would make things better. And the first thing he always said was, I'm going to try to fix Washington. I'm going to try to fix it and make it work better. 7 years later, he hasn't fixed a damn thing. He's made it worse. No, he's made it worse.
Ellen.
Well, if he's made, by your own talk, Congressman, he has not made it worse, because, as you say, he has established relationships with Iran, which people can complain about. He's established, I'm probably the only person in this room that's actually been to Iran, so okay. He's established relationships. He's opened the door with Cuba. I'm probably one of the few people in this room that's also been to Cuba. He has...
Yeah, but we got nothing for that.
What do you mean?
We got nothing
well,
for
how do you
that.
know we have nothing for it, Mark?
Oh, come on. They did not improve their treatment of their own people. You know, it's one thing to normalize with Cuba after you've normalized with Vietnam and you have trading with China, but the Cubans didn't give anything back. They didn't say they were going to clean up their act under Castro. We were kind of waiting until the Castro brothers died. So we got nothing back, and we opened up the deal. So the big beneficiaries are the travel agents, because all the cruise ships go there now. I mean, and on Iran, is that a good deal? He has probably put us in a more dangerous position because of that. You don't think so?
Actually, I don't.
Oh.
Because what's going on in Iran is you have the mullahs and the right-wingers and all that and the Holocaust deniers, and then you have a younger group of people the age of the college students here, who have actually been on the internet. You know, I was in China last year, and the internet is closed there, as you know, and I was told by a journalism professor, oh, we're on the internet, the larger internet, all the time. I said, really? She said, yes, we call it leaping over the Great Wall. And so that's also what's going on in Iran. You have these top older guys that are saying no, 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 and you have a younger generation that wants what is openness with the United States.
All right, look, can I just
Go ahead.
I don't want to argue. I don't want to argue these issues, but on the issues in the campaign that we agreed are probably the two biggest issues are terrorism and immigration and all, and jobs and the economy. And I would think most people in this room and most people in the country, when asked the old Reagan question on those two things, are you better off today on those two issues, on ISIS, immigration, all that, and on jobs and the economy, are you better off today than you were 7 years ago? No.
Wait, what are you talking about? Excuse me. When Bush left office and in 2008, I was on Fox News all the time watching the stock market be destroyed, and unemployment was out of the roof, and now unemployment's down to 5%. Even if you think that they're cheating with unemployment, it's still much better.
But here's the thing. I think there's.
And so is the economy. The stock market was like at 6,000 points.
Ellen, here's the thing. I think at the end of the George W. Bush era, the country began a revolution. Not in the streets of shooting each other, but a revolution against the establishment because it wasn't working. The banks were ripping us off and all this, and big business is corrupt and the government's corrupt. And we had Occupy Wall Street. All these things have come along, and we're on a decline. And now is the next big election, an open White House. And is someone, even more than Obama, going to come along and really get the thing back on track? Now, the appeal of Trump and the appeal of Obama, both out of the box, we tend to do the opposite. So we had George W. Bush, from the Bush family, been in power forever, ended up being sort of a flop of a president with the Middle East and all. So what did we do? We went to the opposite. We go not to another guy from a legacy family. We go to a guy from Chicago who's never been part of anything. We had a conservative in Bush, so we go to a liberal in Obama. We have hope that this will be better. Okay. It hasn't worked out. So now we're going to the most opposite of Obama, which is, at the moment, Trump. So Obama seems weak. Trump is strong. Obama wants to get in bed with the mullahs. Trump says, I'll cancel the deal. Obama's this and that. Trump is the exact opposite. And it's working for Trump.
All right, I want to give Ellen the last word on that. And then we got to do the Supreme Court.
Well, the only last word is you might not feel that things are better, but they're a lot better than they were when he got elected in 2008 after 8 years of a Republican Bush.
The only part, I'll tell you, my favorite part to disagree on that is the job thing. 5% unemployment. I can't accept that number because I think that part of the reason it's that low is people gave up looking for jobs or their benefits ran out. So they don't count them anymore.
How do you explain the stock market going from 6,000 to where it is today?
It's not because of the president.
Oh, I totally disagree.
All right, let's talk about the Supreme Court. Then we're going to take 2 questions from the audience. I need 2 students, one from the left, one from the right. Have your hands up. I want my 2 folks who are right by them. I want 2 students. First, the Supreme Court. Have we shattered the myth that it's important that who we choose as president will choose the best Supreme Court? Because sometimes you get a Republican and they pick people who end up going liberal. You pick a liberal president and they pick people who go conservative. What's the basis of how important is the president in terms of the next Supreme Court? Both of you.
Very.
Yeah?
Very, because you have a lot of things that you don't want overturned. You don't want Roe versus Wade overturned, at least I don't. I don't want gay marriage overturned, and you don't want to get a Supreme Court that's going to do this.
John.
Well, obviously it's very important, and the other factor in it is the composition of the U.S. Senate. So if Bernie Sanders got elected president, which would make her the happiest person in this room, but if the Republicans still had the Senate, probably his people that he would pick would not be confirmable. So and it's all politics, you know. It's all politics. The Supreme Court is all politics. It's a political institution. So
but you never really can depend.
You cannot depend. You
Once
do
they
not
get in.
know when you pick a man or now a woman to be on the Supreme Court. First of all, you are not supposed to even ask them on a case, how would you rule? They usually won't answer that type of thing. So you're guessing. And then when they get the lifetime appointment, they can do whatever they want.
Let's go on the left now. We need a student. Your question.
Yeah, I just had a question about immigration and some rules about the border stuff that would come up in both sides of the party. I know Trump has said he wants to shut down the borders and get rid of Muslims and all sorts of different crazy stuff. But why has nobody really talked about on either party about why like radicalization via social media inside this nation? I mean, if you shut down the borders, that's not going to change anything via, if I can talk to someone in Syria on a computer and get radicalized inside the nation. Why isn't anyone really talking about that? Because I think that's a bigger issue that no one wants to really talk about.
Radicalization, thoughts from
Well, I mean, it does come up because we know that the San Bernardino guy, who was an American, got radicalized in America. And then he met the wife and went over and got her and brought her back, and she had already been radicalized, I believe, in Pakistan. You know, it's a great question. This has not been talked about that I'm aware of.
Well, and actually, I think it has been, because you have the FBI that used informants. Now, you know, I'm against them coming into certain kinds of meetings and using informants, but sometimes informants are useful. And they stopped 30 people from being killed that this guy said he wanted to kill in Wisconsin the other day. So I think that actually it has been talked about, and they have talked about what they're going to do about this.
But Ellen, what about this? Because I think this is a little closer to what he's asking, which is, because it gets to the issue of internet censoring in America. Should we consider banning internet from Syria into the United States, where they may be ISIS using that? Because didn't we have some guys in Minnesota that got radicalized or something over the internet? And I know in Canada they've had several cases of it.
I think it's an impossible, we can say we want to do it, you can pass a law. I mean, you have people doing kiddie porn in the dark web that most of us wouldn't even know how to access or how to get to. So I don't see how you can do that. I think the only way they can do it is what they did in Wisconsin, which is to have informants.
Yeah. I got a bigger answer to it, too.
What's your answer?
Does it bring down radicalization by limiting immigration, to the student's question? It doesn't address the radicalization issue. If Trump is using immigration to deal with radicalization, as long as they can go on the internet, there's going to be radicalization.
Well, it's a different issue, because he's talking about radicalizing people that are already here in the United States. Trump is talking about not letting any more come into the United States while we get a handle on immigration. And what he should have done, and it would have been less electric, he should have said, I want to propose a freeze on all immigration for a year until we get a handle on all of it. What we're going to do with the people that are already here, that came illegally, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about people who have visa issues? We got to settle that. Do we want more H-1B visas? All these things, the country has a right to decide after the next election, the new Congress, the new president. We really need to get immigration under control. Nobody believes.
What do you do about our international responsibility, which we have signed on in 1951, to take in refugees that need to be taken in?
Well, by the way, we didn't always do that. You know, from 1924 to 1965, there was no immigration into this country. We froze it for 40 years.
Well, we
So we've done it, but we froze it for 40 years.
What are you talking about? We brought in tons of people after World War II.
Not tons, very few people. It was been basically frozen. There were some people brought in and some people after the Korean War. But go look, this thing was shut down for a long time. Now, I'm not proposing that. I'm just saying politically,
we sent back to
Trump
St. Louis with the people in
Trump
their
got
deaths.
into a lot of trouble by singling out Muslims. If he'd said, freeze the whole thing for a year until we figure it out, I think it would have been less electric. Because it assumes that all Muslims are bad news and that they're all radicals, and that's not true. And it discriminates against good people, and it's not fair.
Let's go to the right side now, and right in the middle we have a question from a student.
Hi, I've got a question for you that I think a lot of students my age especially are kind of wondering, and I'll ask it for a couple of reasons. Do you ever think that there's a possibility of running a third party in the United States? We have so many people who are coming from the very, very left, the very, very right, and a lot of students my age fall somewhere in between. You know, I sometimes am a Republican, I'm sometimes a Democrat. Do you think it's possible to see that, especially with the decline in economic and everything else that we've got going on?
Is there a possibility of having a third major party?
Yes, well, you know, it was interesting because when, and I'm having a senior moment, got 19% of the vote. What's his name?
Ross Perot.
Ross Perot got, you know, he ran again. And instead of saying, I'm going to build a party, it was all about Ross Perot. So I think that if you have a Bloomberg candidacy, and whether he wins or loses, let's assume he loses, he could then take, if he got 19% of the vote, build a third party. That would be very interesting. That would be a gift to this country. I'm not sure he's willing to do that.
I think it's a little different. I think, first of all, the trend in America, especially among you young folks, is to register as independent. You're not Republican or Democrat because you've all probably correctly figured out that both parties have become rotten institutions that aren't working right. And I think what's happening right now in the presidential election will have a lot to say about this issue, which is if the Republicans lose in November, I think we're witnessing the end of the Republican Party as we've known it. I think it is dying. It is so hopelessly divided, like I mentioned like half an hour ago. This thing is a wreck. And if we lose the presidency in a year when we can win it, we haven't won the presidency in the popular vote since 1988. We've won it once, 2004. President George W. Bush narrowly beat Kerry. But we're talking 5, 6 elections where we don't win any of them anymore in the popular vote. And this is the sign of a party that's dying. So what I think is going to happen, instead of a third party, you're going to have a new second party. I think the Republicans will die like the Whigs did. And out of the Whigs came the Republicans with elements from other parties, including Democrats. And I think that will happen here.
By the way, you mentioned Romney, and you weren't crazy about him as a candidate.
Well, I mean, look, this is very corny, but if you're going to run for office, I can criticize nice Ellen as a fellow political person, and I like her, and it's for fun. But one thing you can never do, in my view, is criticize the American people, even if you disagree with them, all right? You're running to work for them. We've all had bosses in our jobs. Do you run around publicly dumping on your boss? Because if you do, you're going to be out of work. And you have to have respect for the American people, and to say that 47% of them are moochers and rip-off artists, not good. Okay? It really, to me, it's a disqualifier. Well, it hurt them terribly, and it's a disqualifier. You're supposed to be president of everybody. And you cannot look at the people you work for and say, you're a loser, moocher, rip-off artist. It's not good. You have to have respect for them, even if you don't agree with them. And what you ought to be trying to do is convince them to come to your side of things.
Well, I actually don't, I agree with him on this, that you have to, shocking, but you do have to realize that you do work for absolutely everybody in your district, everybody in your state, everybody in the country. That is your job.
Yeah. Exit question. Will this be the biggest turnout in 20 years or not? Is it just
tonight or in the fall or when?
For the fall election.
Probably.
You do think?
Yeah, well, first of all, the country's bigger. I think we're headed, the reason these crowds have been so big for Trump and Sanders is because those voters are so unhappy. And the country's unhappy. And I think they're going to be even more unhappy by the fall. And I would expect a humongous turnout.
And I will agree but disagree. If you have Trump and Sanders, I think you're going to have a huge turnout. If you have, Bush or Kasich, even though he's from the great state of Ohio, and Hillary Clinton, et cetera, I don't think the turnout is as great.
What if it's Trump and Hillary?
Huge. Ooh. Huge. It's going to be huge.
Okay, we want to thank some students who helped us tonight. We had a whole bunch of help today. Deepak Kumar, Vittorio Custode, Tim Kristovic, Taylor Lyons, Taylor Mobley, our director Tony Petro up there tonight, Michael Nissep, Brendan Conway, and of course Bob Scort directing for us tonight. Thanks to Tony Marks and his crew. Let's show them what's coming up in 2 weeks. Hold on, everybody. Chuck Hagel, a former Secretary of Defense who was a Republican, and still is, I guess, and served as Secretary of Defense in the Obama administration. Our next guest, get here early. It's going to begin at 7. Doors are going to open at 6, but we're expecting a huge crowd. We will have overflow rooms next in the Embry-Riddle Speaker Series. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, a warm thanks to Ellen Ratner, John LeBoutillier.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job, Ellen.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Have a very pleasant evening.